And to answer the first chat question, yes, this is going to be recorded. And Sarah has graciously let me know that she will provide the slides afterwards in PDF to me. And if you would like the content, I'd like you to email me afterwards and I will send out the information to you. So welcome, and turning it over to you now, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marianne, for first of all, for organizing this talk and for that warm welcome. I'm very excited to be here and sharing this, my knowledge about this transformational tool that is rapidly changing and is changing us with it. I was telling Marianne before this talk that, in fact, it has been changing so quickly that between the time that I proposed this talk to Marianne and right now, I had to do several rewrites because I didn't know what was going to be relevant and what was not going to be relevant. So hopefully the information that I'm going to share with you will still remain relevant by the end of this talk. So having said that, I'm going to share, I'm going to make sure. I'm going to pause this share. Sorry, this is on a wrong slide.
Okay.
We have a lot of information for you folks. So I'm going to try to go through them quickly so we have time for some questions at the end as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So everyone can see this?
Perfect, Sarah.
All right, wonderful. So one of the things that I wanted to do in this process of not knowing, what is going to be familiar for folks and whatnot. So I thought to give you a roadmap of this talk. First of all, I'm going to tell you the genesis story of how this talk came to be, what was happening to me on my end and as I was doing these research. I'm going to tell you about the impact of AI on the job market, including family mediation. And then I'm going to take you through a family mediation case demo on ChatGPT. I have it written out. I wanted to do a live demo for you, but ChatGPT at times, especially at this time of the day, is very busy. So we might have technical difficulties, but I have it on the slides. And I'm going to end it with the road ahead and where we're headed, or where I think we're headed. So OpenAI, which is a company that owns and created ChatGPT, released GPT last November. And by the time that I started engaging with it, I actually came to it a little bit later, around late January, early February. And the reason that I started researching about it is that I was going through a process of rewriting my website. So as Marianne said, we have a small company, Parable Conflict Solutions, where we do different things. And I was going to separate the work aspect of the website from the family mediation aspect of the website. And as folks who have done, their own websites, if you write your own copy editing, you know that the process of copy editing is actually quite hard, and it's quite tedious because you have to make sure that what you write is concise. It hits, the sort of like the market points for your clients. I'm working through all of this, and I'm also hearing about what ChatGPT does in terms of writing. And I know at that point that at least writing itself is in peril. So what I do one day is like, as I'm writing for my clients, what is family mediation? I'm actually going to go to ChatGPT and I'm going to type and I'm going to ask ChatGPT to tell me what family mediation is. And in a very short, concise paragraph, in matters of seconds, ChatGPT tells me something that, in fact, I actually think it has plagiarized it from my website. And I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I want to point out what it says, that, a neutral third party called a mediator will assist family members in issues such as divorce, separation, child custody, alimony, and alimony in bracket because this is an American website. And, a mediator doesn't make decisions, help parties to reach a mutually acceptable agreement, preserves relationships, outcomes, you have more control over the outcomes compared to litigation. And it is voluntary because people have to be willing to participate. as I read this, I almost have this thought that, oh my God, did it just plagiarize what I was writing? Because I have my Google Doc open, I have like different website open. And at this point, we do know that some writers are in fact suing ChatGPT on accounts of plagiarism, including Sarah Silverman. So for kicks, I'm like, I'm going to go to Google and I'm also going to ask, and I'm going to see how Google defines family mediation. And of course, I'm going to tell you in a second, I'm going to tell you about the difference between Google's search engine and ChatGPT. But Google's search engine will show me a brief paragraph from the government of Ontario, which is this. Mediation is a negotiation between two individuals with someone's help. If you and another person cannot agree on separation issues, you can try to reach an agreement outside of the court. Mediation can be faster, cheaper, and more private, which is a good paragraph. And this is a good informational paragraph to any user or any client who wants to know what family mediation is. However, I have to highlight that the first paragraph, ChatGPT's response, is actually much better. In one paragraph, few sentences, it is hitting all the points that we almost write about in terms of what is family mediation. So this is not when it changes my mind, actually, because I'm like, okay, this is, of course, this is what it does. This is what it has been trained to do. So let me actually do other things. So what I end up doing is, over the next few weeks after this, in our household, we are using ChatGPT a lot to do different kind of research. Tell me to watch a movie that is like Lord of the Rings. Help me prepare a meal based on these ingredients that I have. So we're doing all of that. And then one night, my partner and I are just sitting and talking philosophy and politics. And we're particularly talking about the American Civil War and what was the difference between Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation and Declaration. Like, what is the difference between these two words? So we're having this conversation, and I tell to my partner, oh, I'm just going to Google it. And he says to me, no, you should ChatGPT it. Because at this point, we are using ChatGPT as a verb, the same way we would use Google as a verb. And I say, no, I'm actually going to Google it. And I want to show you very briefly what Google shows me and then what ChatGPT shows me. So Google, as you know, is a search engine. And this is the first response that it will tell me, that generally declaration and statements are directed at church members, whereas proclamations are meant to reach beyond the scope of church membership. They are proclamations to the world. And this is because Google's algorithm works in this way. I mean, we don't fully know how Google's algorithm work because these companies don't release and they're not transparent about how they do things. But one of the ways that we know Google algorithm works is that depending on the amount of traffic that you get to a website shows up higher on the first page of Google. So here, the first thing that I get is Latter-day Saints church news about how proclamation and declaration are defined. And of course, this isn't helpful for me. So I actually go to another website. And this is, for the sake of time, I didn't show you the second one. This is the third website that I go to, and I'm starting to understand a little bit more between the difference between proclamation and declaration, that one is a formal public announcement. But I also have to say, even in this website, it makes me laugh because it defines proclamation as a statement which is proclaimed and a declaration as a statement that is declared. And I'm almost left thinking, oh, well, thank you very much for telling me that a noun can be turned into a verb. Like, of course, I know that, but this isn't helpful. And at this point, I have spent 5 minutes reading 3 different articles on Google, and I'm getting frustrated that, you know what, I am just looking for a simple definition. And then I turn to GPT. And this is what it shows me. That, first of all, there are very close by, but they have slight difference and different connotations. One is that for proclamation, it's a formal public announcement. It's a matter of public concern. doesn't necessarily make something legally binding, but it is used to draw attention to an issue or to commemorate an event. And on the other hand, declaration is a declaration of formal or an explicit statement. It is often used to establish new laws or legal proceedings. It can be more definitive, assertive, and it gives me examples that it could be a country's declaration of independence, or it could be a declaration of income for the tax purposes that is made to a government agency. So I spent 5 minutes, and again, 5 minutes is not a long time to try to figure out something, but nonetheless, 5 minutes versus 5 seconds. And within 5 seconds, I actually had really good answers to a very simple question that I thought Google should be able to answer. And this is the first time after all this weeks that I have spent, it's the first time that I feel like we are at a precipice of something so profound and both incredibly beautiful and incredibly scary simultaneously, because I had no idea that this could be done, and I will show you what more can be done in this process. And this is the first time, and this is happening in April. This is the first time that I think, oh, Google as a search engine might be on its way out, or in fact, it might be dead because look, it can't do what GPT does. And with that, when we are talking about these really standing at a precipice of something really huge, historians and, sociopolitical scientists usually look back at times in human history when something very rapid and quickly changed our lives. And of course, the two major times in our recent history that we can think about it, one is the dot-com era, so the beginning of the internet, and the other one is further back, is the Industrial Revolution of the 19th and the 20th century. And one of the things that some folks, at least within academia, talk about is that industrial revolution and how quickly it brought out transformation, it actually changed us as human beings, because the rapid advancement in transportation, in communication, in medicine, and then ultimately in labor, and I'm not going to go into details of it, but to give you for a couple of examples, it changed human body to a sense that the very repetitive movement, brought certain diseases and brought certain things that is happening to our bodies that it didn't happen to the humans of pre-industrialized era, because they were moving a lot more. And of course, one of the big things that we know that happened as a result of industrial revolution was the alienation from one's labor, because we were no longer seeing the final product that we were creating. I bring this up, I bring up the example of the Industrial Revolution really to set the backdrop of what we are seeing happening today, because what a lot of folks in the field of both tech and labor are talking about is that we are possibly starting or beginning to start another revolution, and this time is an AI revolution. I attended, so the first thing that I wanted to tell you that I think we're already, and I put AI revolution, with questions in parentheses, but one of the things that I wanted to tell you that I think is already happening is that I attended a conference provided by Mediate.com, which brought in folks from both the tech industry and the online dispute resolution industry, which the Venn diagram of these two are actually quite small. So it brought people together. And one of the presenters, it really stood out to me in terms of what they were saying this will do for the court system, because they were super excited about it. And I actually think there are some really exciting, amazing things that are about to happen. But one of the things that they were saying that is going to happen within the court system and dispute resolution is that there will be AI generated arbitrations and decision-making power, because through access through proper data, previous cases and precedents that have been made, AI will be able to, you will be able to give a particular case to this AI model, and the AI within matters of seconds will be able to adjudicate a decision on this particular case because it has a lot of these data. And of course, this is partially very exciting because as folks are working, the tech folks who are working on this, at least on some level, their argument is this is really going to help marginalize folks within the court system. Because as we know, both the court systems in Canada, but also the United States, they have a huge backlog. And sometimes people's cases don't even see the light of day. And if they do, it will take years for them to appear before a judge. So this process, the excitement around this is that it will cut out the human middle, and it will not require as much time and as much human labor, because imagine this, that you have a technology that if, and underline, bold, circle that if it has access to properly vetted data and proper cases, you can input a case, and again, within seconds, it will come up with a decision. How quickly the turnarounds will be in small claims court, and how more quickly resolutions will happen for folks. And the particular excitement that was coming out of folks talking about this in this conference was that it is also exciting because in cutting the human in the middle, we will also cut the potential biases that this human will inevitably have, whether this human is a mediator, a judge, an arbitrator, or a lawyer. And of course, as I'm hearing this, I'm like, wait, I don't think people will trust AI more than human beings. So I do a very quick, and I have to tell you, this is very anecdotal data and anecdotal evidence. You can also ask this from your family members. But I go to a few of my family members and I say, hey, I have heard this. Who would you trust to adjudicate your case? AI or, a human being? Without every single person response with AI, that everyone in my family, surprisingly, actually will trust AI in terms of reduction in biases that it will have. And this is quite, this is quite shocking for me. There was something else that was happening at this conference, and this is why I wanted to talk about this earlier as opposed to later. There was a professor, and we were asking, because there were quite a few mediators, and we were asking him, how long do you foresee this actually impacting the labor of mediators, arbitrators, judges? And he said, well, we don't, no one has a crystal ball in terms of what is going to happen. But what we are probably going to see is that the first impact of this is going to be on the jobs of arbitrators. And we are going to see that in this decade. And he said, for folks who are mediators, and he was very kind about it. He's like, for folks who are mediators, I think we're going to see the effects of that in the 30s. And I think that was a very kind estimate of timeline, because I think we are going to see the impact of this a lot earlier. And I want to give you examples of what we are already seeing, both in the field or outside of mediation, but also the field of mediation and ADR. So the example of this, and again, some folks who are really following the news on AI and technology, you might already know about this. But one of the things that is already happening in the job market, we are already seeing reductions and job losses in certain white-collar sectors, such as human resources, accounting, payrolls. And in fact, IBM, just in May, the end of May, I believe, they announced that for the foreseeable future, they are going to pause hiring on any job that they think AI is going to replace within the next several months or several years. So they have freeze hiring. And of course, they haven't come out and say, because I think when we think about labor disruption, a lot of times we think, oh, mass layoffs. And of course, mass layoffs might happen. IBM hasn't said that yet. But I think what is going to happen, or slowly is going to happen, is that as certain folks leave their jobs, as they retire or move to another jobs, those jobs will not be replaced by new human power. Rather, those jobs will be replaced by AI. And in fact, the question will be, what jobs can't the machine do? Those will be the only jobs that will be left for humans, because everything else will be automated. Another example of this, that we're already seeing this happening, is in any area there is a huge labor disruption in any area that has educational work. And the example that I wanted to give you is a company named Chegg, and this is a US-based company. This is an educational company, and a lot of their clients' users were university students. And what is fascinating is that Chegg had a program that practically did what ChatGPT does, is that you input a prompt and you will ask it to write a paper or to do this, to solve this problem for you, and it will do that. Chegg, and I think, again, it was either the end of May or beginning of June, they actually announced, their CEO announced that they cannot give the revenues for their upcoming quarters, because they actually cannot predict that, since ChatGPT has taken a huge chunk out of their revenue. So they cannot predict what is going to happen with their company. And after that announcement, their stock plummeted, because of course students aren't using it anymore, because there is this free product, or a product that, if you're using ChatGPT 4, it's $20 a month and you can use it as long as you want, and then finish your subscription. So, and of course, more AI models are coming out. Google and Microsoft were a little bit behind OpenAI, but Google has already released Bard. Microsoft has already released Bing. I haven't used much of them because I've been very much involved with ChatGPT. And I have to say, some of my work that I have done with either Bard or Bing hasn't been as impressive. So that's why I will leave everything, I will limit it to ChatGPT. And the other example that I wanted to give you regarding knowledge production is from my own work at Parable. A lot of our work, as Marianne, thank you so much, when you were talking about what Parable does, is a lot of knowledge production and dissemination of information in training people in whatever training it is at workplace, whether to change difficult conversation into learning conversation, how to have courageous conversations around microaggressions. How do you respond to a terse email from your boss? Or, how do you use the principles of BIF by Bill Eddy to talk with your co-parent? So over the last, this was about a few months ago, we had a workshop, and then we talked with one of the workshop participants who actually had a problem and wanted to do one-on-one coaching. And their problem was that they were a photographer, and this was sort of about copyright infringement, and they wanted to send an email to an artist who had used their photos without giving credit to the photographer. And the way they wanted to approach it is that they wanted to write an email that was kind, but wanted to affirm boundaries. So I worked with them. We talked about impact and intentions, and how do you separate the person from the problem. I did a lot of coaching. And in fact, it went really well, to the point that the client came back and said, thank you so much. What we did together, it actually saved my business relationship with this particular artist. So thank you. At the end of this call, so this took about 2 hours of labor, from end to end. At the end of this process, I go to ChatGPT and I just type in, this is my problem. I want to send an email. And these are the criteria that I want the email to have. And again, within 5 seconds, it writes me an email that it's not an A+ email. And I would write it better because I'm experienced in this, but it is pretty darn close. And this is, again, it's one of those moments that I look and I feel like, oh, the skills that I had just evaporate before my eyes as this is happening, because you no longer need a trainer. You no longer need a conflict coach and possibly a mediator, because this client isn't doing it now, or wasn't doing it, 4 months ago when they reached out to me, but they might be doing it now, that they can just input their case into ChatGPT, and they would have to know what prompt they would have to use. And that prompt, put an asterisk beside it, that prompt is very important. You still have to know that. But nonetheless, there is now an option available to educate people, to tell them what to do and what to say, that makes some of our jobs obsolete at this point. And what I want to show you now is, in the remainder of the time, to take you through a family mediation demo. This was a complex case, or at least a complex case for me, that it took several months for me to get through. The case is closed now, and I was having some challenges with it, to the point that I couldn't get the parties past impasse. And I ultimately decided I'm going to reach out to one of my mentors, who's a lawyer, and I'm going to ask him, based on, this is my scenario, this is what I have done, do you think there is anything that I should have done? But before doing that, as I'm, waiting for the appointment date to show up, because, we are setting an appointment, I also say to myself, you know what? I'm going to ask ChatGPT about what I should do with this case. So I just want to I'm going to couch what I'm about to say, is that this case was a lot more complex, and I took out a lot of the complexities in order to protect the confidentiality of folks. So the case that you're going to see does not have as much information. And I also want to couch it by saying that, as a writer, when I look at what ChatGPT tells me in terms of writing, I would give it a B or a B plus. So it isn't doing that great. It's not an A plus program, but nonetheless, it is good enough. And I think for folks who have been doing mediation for decades and you're very well experienced, this is going to be a B plus thing. It's not going to be a Kenneth Cloak of mediation, but it is going to be very close. And I want to show you, the reason that I want to show you this is I want to show you what prompt I gave as a mediator and what was the response of the AI program. So this is the prompt. I'm a mediator and I have a challenging situation I need help with. I'm going to write out the case, wait until I say go, and then provide suggestions and recommendations on how to move the client past impasse using these two laws. And this is very important. I'm going to come back to this. Make sure your prompts are as specific as possible, because if you take out Ontario laws and divorce laws, it's going to give you information that is mainly US based. So this is its response. Sure, I'm here to help. Please provide me with the case details. And I specifically wrote some of these for you to know how ChatGPT responds to me. So here's my prompt. This is a case of family mediation around division of property, particularly matrimonial home. The husband wants to buy the house. The wife wants to sell the house because she believes she will get more money. According to their NFP calculations, the amount that the husband would have to pay the wife in the equalization payment is the same in both cases. But I can't move either of them from their positions. What can I say to each party to move them closer to each other? Also consider that there are 4 children involved. 2 are in university, 1 in high school, 1 in junior high. The 2 kids who are at home say they're good to stay or they're good to move. The wife wants a fresh start. The husband wants to keep the house because the market isn't doing great right now. This is the prompt. I'm not going to read everything to you in terms of what ChatGPT says, but I'm going to summarize the response, and I'm going to tell you how this conversation between the AI machine and me goes back and forth. So first of all, the AI is very validating. It's like, yes, this is a challenging case that balances emotional needs, and it constantly validates me, as you will see. And it's like, let's break it down. These are the things that it will tell me. First, we must understand their positions and interests. It seems like this is what the wife wants. This is what the husband wants. Let's summarize them. The husband's perspectives are to keep the house, but the wife feels like she would get more money by selling the house. Maybe bring a neutral third-party appraiser to give realistic estimates of the home value. Okay, good. We know this. Again, we know this. These are good starting points. Wife's perspective. Maybe explore possibilities of how she can achieve a fresh start, even if the husband keeps the house, such as using her share of an equalization payment to buy a new home. And it continues. These are numbers 4 and 5, but it showed up as 1 and 2. Consider the children's perspective, consider the finances. And it will ultimately also tell me, and this is the first response that it will have, remember, you're not here to provide legal advice, but to facilitate their discussion. And this to me is very surprising as well, that it is talking to me as though it is one of my teachers. Like, this isn't your job. Your job isn't to provide legal advice. It's a facilitation of a conversation. And I say, okay, you know what? I've done all of these and I still can't move them. What else can I say to draw their underlying interest? And its response is, you're right, this can be very challenging. Let me give you more stuff. So 1, restate their positions, paraphrase them in a neutral manner, discuss the implications, ask, what does it mean for the wife to sell it? Get them to really think deeply about their motivations. Do role reversals. Ask them to argue the other party's position. Ask open-ended questions. Again, some really, solid B-level mediation stuff. Focus on interests, not positions. Use what-if scenarios such as, what if the husband keeps the house but agrees to sell it after a few years when the market potentially recovers? Emphasize their common goals, such as the well-being of their children, desire for financial stability. Talk about alternatives. What are their alternatives to a mediated agreement, and how litigation can be lengthy and costly? So it is starting through this conversation, as you're seeing, and we're going to go through it. It is starting to tell me more and more, and it's starting to get detailed. And I say, okay, great. Help me write some open-ended questions for each of the parties in this case. Sure, here are some open-ended questions for you. Here are 5 open-ended questions for the husband, and I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm going to read some of them for you. How do you envision your life and the life of your kids if you continue to stay in the house? What other aspect of your financial situations might be impacted if you decide to sell or not sell the house? And again, you don't have to, as I look at this as a junior mediator. I've been mediating. I started as a workplace mediator, so I've been mediating for about 5 years. I look at some of these questions. I'm like, these questions are good. They're a bit basic, but they can actually spark something for me. It's like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I haven't thought about this. Maybe let's ask him, what other financial, is there something else that might be impacted for him if he decides to not sell the house? What about the wife? Could you share, for example, in what ways a fresh start could benefit you and the kids? Can you elaborate on your vision of what this fresh start would look like even? And again, it will tell me the goal is to encourage both parties to think about their immediate positions and articulate their deep concerns and fears. I'm like, great, let's talk more. And this is what I ask it. And again, remember, I haven't given it any more information at this point. I just reference back, I really like your what if scenarios. What can you come up with 5 more what ifs? Because I want to use these in mediation. This is what it will tell me. Of course, here are some additional what if scenarios. And these what if scenarios are now starting to give me more ideas. Like, oh, great. What if the husband, stays in the house for a predetermined period for a time, and then the house is sold, ensuring that the children have more stability for their school? Or what if the wife were to retain a percentage of the house's value, such as if the house was sold at a later date, agreed upon by both, she would receive her proportionate share of the proceeds. And we will, again, take a look at what the last paragraph says. Remember, the goal of what if scenario is to get the parties to think outside of their initial positions and consider alternative solutions. I actually took out a sentence from here because there was no space on my slide. It actually tells me your job as a mediator is not to come up with solutions for folks. You can provide what if scenarios, but your job is to let them decide. Remember that. So it's starting to sound, pretty good. And so I pause here, and I haven't shared that part with you because, again, for the sake of time, I pause here and I say, absolutely. Sorry, I'm just looking at some of your text about, yes, the consideration, the cost of the consideration of the real estate, all of this. You're absolutely right. There's so many nuances and permutations that you can actually work. And if you have, because Larry, these are great comments. If you have a very specific case, you can put the specifics of your case and the result will be much more complex and nuanced. So what I do is, this is what I do here, actually. So I will write, I'm like, listen, this is what has happened. The husband has come back and said, I think my wife is struggling. Okay, we've done spousal support calculations. Let's do this. Let's sweeten the pot a little bit. I'm going to say, I'm going to pay for the next 10 years. The husband was doing very well. For the next 10 years, I'm going to add an additional $500 a month on top of spousal support in order to help offset, some financial instability that she might have in order for me to be able to keep the house. I type this in and I will say, I think the wife will still be resistant to this. Write an actual conversation, write a dialogue for me where I, as a mediator, can use during the mediation to move people forward. So at this point, I am telling it, don't tell me any more theories, because I know these theories. Give me some specific stuff. And this is what it says. Certainly, I can present you with a dialogue. And again, I'm not going to read you the dialogue word by word, but I think you're starting to see, or I hope that folks are starting to see, that it can provide so much augmentation to a family mediation process. Whereas I will say something and it will tell me, you should say this. I recognize that you have reservations about the current proposal. Can you help me understand what specifically about this offer doesn't feel right to you? And the wife will say, I'm worried about relying on spousal support and not having the solid asset of the house. And the AI will say, you as a mediator can say, validate them. That's a valid concern. Financial security is essential. But remember, accepting spousal support doesn't prevent you from having other assets. We can legally safeguard a spousal support so that it is consistent. Would you be open to discussing this? And at this point, I want to pause here because the AI can foresee, based on my explanation, what worries and fears the other party might have. And let's say the wife will say, no, this is still not good. And the AI will tell me, okay, tell them, of course, your preference is very important. I want you to be comfortable with the solution, but just for perspective, the current offer on the table does provide a good balance between immediate financial stability and long-term security. The final decision rests on you. We're here to explore. Do you see any part of the current offer that could work for you if we were to adjust some details? And it finishes at this point. And I will tell it, you know what, this isn't enough. The wife is more challenging than this. Continue the dialogue. I need more help. And it will continue. Sure, let's continue the dialogue. And the wife will say, and here, something else that, you know what? I don't trust that he'll be consistent with providing the support. And what if something happens to him? Again, the AI has been able to predict possibly what the wife in this case is going to say in this conversation. And it will tell me, in case the wife were to say this, address it this way. That, for example, we can explore ways that spousal support is enforceable and consistent, such as setting up automatic withdrawal from his bank account, or we can even explore using life insurance as a safeguard. Would you be open to that? And the wife still says no. And it will give me another prompt in terms of what else to say. So at this point, and I hope you're already seeing that I started a case and we just started talking back and forth with the AI. I didn't have to tell it much else in terms of, what else is happening. It was able to reference back what I had said at the beginning and provide me with a lot of information. And of course, this information is not as nuanced as I was saying at the beginning, because I took out a lot of identifying factors here, but the response of the AI was a lot more complex than I put it here. And this is the tricky part. So I'm waiting because I'm not going to, as a mediator, I'm not going to just trust AI technology to tell me, what to tell clients. I want to make sure that I'm right. So I'm keeping my appointment with my mentor. And of course, we're having a conversation. This becomes, a 30 to a 40-minute conversation. I am so grateful for it. And he tells me, he's like, and I tell him, this is the case. These are all the things that I have done. Am I missing something? Because I'm starting to question my ability. He's like, no, you're not missing anything. You have done everything correctly. Well done, you. So I'm like feeling also good about myself that my mentor is like, yeah, you're doing a good job. Great. And on that level, in terms of being able to get that human connection, it is absolutely wonderful to have my mentor validate and tell me step by step, everything that you've done is correct. And this might be one of those cases that it just has to go to litigation. You're okay. What I do want to point out is that on the technical legality of it and on the informational stuff, everything that my mentor told me, the AI had already told me. In fact, I did not need to pick up a phone and call, and I would still call him. And even today, I am going to call him if I have a case like this again, because I can't. It will be some time for me to fully trust something like this. I want to make sure that I'm doing my job correctly. But nonetheless, this is what I mean in terms of we are going to see, and we're already seeing, disruption of labor, particularly in areas of knowledge production, because it is very important. And now this technology can do that for you. And I want to put a caveat to what I'm saying, a word of caution. In fact, you might have already heard about the Avianca case, because this made New York Times, Associated Press talked about this. And I think this will be a case that will be talked about in law schools. And a caveat that I want to put is that AI or ChatGPT, the example that I'm using, isn't always right about what it says. And in fact, when it's not right, people in the tech world call it a hallucination, that the machine is hallucinating. And when it's wrong, it can be so confidently wrong that you're like, oh, wow, maybe I really missed this stuff in my research. So this is a case. Avianca is I think a flight, it's an airline, and a man was suing this airline for a personal injury because a cart had hit his knee and he was injured. So his lawyer was arguing his case, and the lawyer goes to ChatGPT and says, can you find similar cases to what I am dealing with? Figure it out. And ChatGPT is like, of course I can. Here are 6 different cases. Some of them are international flights that have gone through the same process. And the people have, like, the process have been appealed. The people have been able to get their stuff. Here are the dates. Here are the citations. So he writes everything, submits it to the opposing counsel, submits it to the judge. The opposing counsel is looking at this like, wait, what? Why can't we find any of these cases? The judge is looking at this and it's like, where are these cases? We can't find any of them. They go back to the lawyer, and the lawyer's like, oh, I use ChatGPT. Let me also Google this, because, again, Google is a search engine, whereas ChatGPT is a large linguistic model that has been trained from internet data to perceive what a human is going to say and then respond to that in a natural language way. It is not a search engine. And he cannot find any of those cases. So in fact, this goes in front of a judge, and the judge is like, first of all, I am astounded. The judge considers sanctioning this lawyer, saying that everything that you have submitted was based on bogus cases, bogus citation. Nothing was correct in all of this. And the lawyer is like, I am mortified, Your Honor, that this has happened. This, in my 30 years of experience, this has never happened. And of course, this is what I mean about, if you are going to use it, be very careful that, you're not asking it for cases, because a lot of times it actually gives correct information, but I have to put a word of caution that, approach this stuff at this point until it becomes better, and it's going to get better very quickly. But until that point, use it cautiously. And the last thing that I want to tell you folks is, I'm going to leave the questions. Sorry, thank you. I see a question, and I'm going to leave the questions at the end. The last thing that I want to say, I want to talk about the road ahead. And I want to talk to you about rubber duck debugging, which is a concept out of the tech industry. Some of you might have known about it, but for folks who don't know, I'm going to talk about this. This is a concept or an idea that if a coder or a programmer is dealing with a bug in the system and they can't fix it, one of the ways to fix it is that they're going to put a rubber duck on their desk and they're going to talk out their problem to the rubber duck on their desk. And in the process of talking out with the rubber duck, a lot of times they will actually figure out where their mistake was and they can go back and fix the program. And we know this with anything. You don't need to have a rubber duck. You can just talk out to another person or to an inanimate object. What I do want to say is that at this point, the rubber duck talks back. And this is what I want to encourage folks is that I encourage you to not think about AI models as a new social media platform. This isn't like Threads or Blue Sky or Mastodon, everything that is coming out to replace Twitter. This isn't like that. It is a generative model that is going to replace some labor and it's going to shift labor. And the way we're going to see this is that or one of the other ways that we're going to see this is that new companies or new programs or new individuals are going to enter the labor market where with a smaller number of people, they can produce the same results a lot faster. So they're a lot leaner and they're a lot quicker in what they do, and therefore things will be a lot cheaper. So what I wanted to encourage folks really is to get to know these LLM models. I only talked about ChatGPT because it is very accessible, but there's also Bard, there's also Bing. Again, because both Google and Microsoft have been slower in their development, and that's a whole other talk. I think that ChatGPT is a better model, but I'll leave it to you for you folks to decide. But these are the things that you can do in your family mediation businesses. You can write email responses. If you have anything, your email responses now can be pre-generated, as I said. You can create social media contents. Again, make sure that the social media contents you're generating are correct, in fact, but nonetheless, you can give it a prompt and it will generate media content. You can ask it to create you different templates, such as, you know what, and this can be an actual prompt. Give me 10 important questions that I must have for my domestic violence screening. Boom, 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 boom. Here are your 10 questions. And again, you can add, you can subtract, give me questions, things that I need to know about my intake assessment. The AI will be able to do that. You can consult with it about cases and at least to see, am I right about this? If you make your prompts very specific. And the last thing that I want to say is, sorry, I'm just going to my notes, is that we are living at a time where a lot of technologies that are coming out of the Silicon Valley are about decentralization. And I think decentralization has some wonderful, enormous potentials, but we also shouldn't forget that centralization in terms of a strong collective is also very powerful. Back in Industrial Revolution, I'm going to reference that again, we saw that labor needed to rise against capital because it wasn't a good idea, and it still isn't, that only a few people own the means of production and the workers don't get anything from the benefits. So we saw a huge rise in unions, and thank God that they did, because every single health and safety law that we have, anything to do with our weekends and number of hours, break time, all of these are as a result of the organizations that unions did at the time of Industrial Revolution. And we have an example of this right now that is being tested. You might have been following this. The Writers Guild of America is on strike, and one of their big points is actually on AI generated writing, because their work is going to get affected so much. And I use that as an example to say, unions can be very powerful, but unions are not the only strong collectivities. OAFM and FIDRIO are also strong collectivities. And this is why I was very wonderfully surprised to get that email from both OAFM and FIDRO about centralization of different things that OAFM is going to do and some of it that FIDRO is going to do. I actually think it is brilliant. Congratulations to everyone who worked on that, because I think in times it actually takes a lot of foresight. Because we are moving in a time of labor disruption, it is so important to have a professional body, a unified collective, because we need that unified collective to speak in a unified voice to the society on behalf of that organization. And this unified collective also needs its individual to participate and help it out in terms of growth. And that's why I left this last point that, the path ahead is unclear, both in terms of its positive and negative implications. Get organized, whatever in terms of its collectivity it is. So I'm going to stop my share. Thank you so much, everyone, for giving me this time. Here's my email address. I will share all of these with you. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. And I want to open it up for questions, discussions, comments. I think there was already a question.
Yeah. There is one. First of all, I just want to say, like, wow, like I kind of came into this like, oh, that's going to be really cool. It's going to be kind of neat. And then when you showed me this example, like they were asking insight questions, like really good questions that we would take at a high level training, and to give you the cautions and have that dialogue. Like I was like, well, mediation matters. We should just run that like a interactive, like bring your case study, and then we can, push it through ChatGPT. And I love that you also said that you still go to your human mentors to double check, and that, that caution's there. And how cool, like I kind of can't wait to start. I've tried DALL-E, which is the illustration and video production, which
Yes.
my husband is very interested in. And that's incredible, like what you can do on DALL-E. I haven't tried this yet, so I'm definitely going to do that next, but I'll turn it over to there's so many people. I'm sure there's lots of questions. Lisa asks, Lisa, do you want to unmute and ask your question? See if she can. Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Hi. Sorry. Thank you, Marianne.
Yeah.
And thank you, Sarah. I guess my question is, how would this look like if the answers from ChatGPT, as obviously as more information becomes available to it, the answers will no longer be replicated, so it's not quite as reliable. What would this look like in the future for case precedents?
Yeah, that's a really good. Is that the end of your question, Lisa?
Yes, thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. Yes. So I can only guess about what is going to happen in the future because, again, things have been changing so much. So one of the things that you should note is that everything that ChatGPT has stops at 2021 in terms of its data. It doesn't have more recent data yet. And that's what is going to be worked through as more new data comes up. And I would have to say, there is a limit in terms of what it can do. So if I were to repeat my questions again and again and again, and research has shown it's about 20 to 30 times. If I were to repeat the same things again, it will repeat its question, it will repeat its answers again. So it actually has a limited knowledge in terms of how much it can provide, but nonetheless, 25 different scenarios, it's still quite a lot that you can work with. But you are absolutely right. As more cases and more precedent comes in, then it becomes about the question of what happens to that data, who has access to that data, how will that get vetted, how will that be used or potentially misused in these cases as we have seen. So this is something that folks who are in tech and are concerned about a lot of these, they are raising flag about all of these, that there are short-term implications, but there are also long-term implications of AI. I don't know if that helps answer your question, Lisa.
It really does. Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
And Monica has her hand up.
Yes. That's great.
Hi, I'd like to thank OAFM and Sarah for presenting today, because to give a simile, I really feel like I entered this Zoom, like every other Zoom we've come in so many times before, that doesn't supposed to sound disparaging, but like an internal combustion engine car person. And suddenly I was presented with the paradigm shift of electric car, that we're at critical mass. I can no longer ignore it. I can no longer say it's in the future. And I think the reason why I had this shift in my mind now, and I hope that we're going to have more Zooms and learning and talking about this whole area, is because I entered this Zoom somehow vaguely thinking in my mind that ChatGPT and other ones are sort of interchangeable with Google. Oh my God, they're not. It's a totally different animal.
Yeah.
And my resistance, my internal combustion engine mentality was, when it first came out, people first started talking about it earlier this year, I was vaguely threatened by it because I consider myself a good writer. I thought this is like all going to be, you know, there goes my special skill and it's all, you know, plagiarism, blah, blah, blah. And honestly, some of it is, and we need to be careful about that. But my interaction with it so far has been on the level of my business partner being a very poor writer and being thrilled about it and showing me like pieces that she had come up with, and me looking at it and saying, you know, as Sarah has said, I give this a C-. I can do better.
Yes.
And me realizing now that's because it's in its infancy. It's going to take maybe a matter of weeks, maximum months, before it's writing at my level.
Yes.
I need to understand that. I need to understand how can I make clients feel that what I bring is unique and ChatGPT can't?
Absolutely.
Or it ChatGPT plus me.
Absolutely.
That's where we're at, right? So honestly, thank you for like talking about implications and industrial revolution. That all makes sense to me now. And with hindsight, it feels like so obvious, but I hadn't thought that way until you said it.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much, Monica. You're absolutely right. It was the same for me when I started. It was actually, I also felt very threatened because I'm like, I'm a decent writer. I can write. What do you mean? Like my job is going to be taken away? And then I realized that in fact, and this is why, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is that I personally believe if we don't start using this, some of us will become obsolete, because this will almost be like, you know, not using a smartphone or not using a personalized computer. Like you will not be able to do work in this job market because there will be so much competition that will come that can use this and provide things to people who are cheaper. And that's why I thank you, Monica, for saying that, because I thought, if folks know about this more and they can start using it, and maybe next time someone else will, like, you know, give a talk about, oh, I have used Bard and this is what Bard does, or I've used Bing and this is what, like, you know, these are all the other things that you can use. Absolutely. Thank you, Monica.
I think that we need to get a slogan to say chat at GPT plus me.
Yes.
Because I think it really is the intersection between the technology and the human that brings the reality to what we do, and the added bonus of this. You know, I don't know how I'm going to use it or integrate it. I have to, you know, but really your invitation in a very kind way is, you know, don't be afraid. You know, like use it as a tool. You know, make sure that you're using the current tools, because as we go through the next few decades, you know, you're going to have to know a little bit about this if you're going to keep up, which is, you know, a little scary and intimidating. And you gave a nice, gentle introduction. So thank you so much for that,
You're
Sarah.
very welcome. Thank you to Marianne for organizing this. And thank you everyone for coming and participating.
And you're all, as members of OIFM, the first day of our conference is free. Sarah is talking about EDI, September 22nd and 23rd. You can register by emailing me directly for that. If you want Sarah's slides, you can email me and I'll send them out when I've got them. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, all of you. And I'll see you next time. Next week is Our Family Wizard and OACP we're doing a webinar on Our Family Wizard together. So that's July 19th at 1 o'clock as well. So the fun keeps rolling in the summer months. So enjoy.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Very good. Thank you so much.